Good morning, 8th grade. Today we're going to talk about gravity and the solar system. So let's just jump right into it. Now we see here that gravity in the solar system obviously has a very big role in helping each other out. Without gravity, we would not have the solar system. But there was once a time when we didn't know that gravity existed. And so we have this man to thank for it right here, Sir Isaac Newton. And Sir Isaac Newton is a very, very, very important figure in science. He is credited with so many different discoveries that have changed our lives. You will see his name and his image pop up very, very often, to the point where it'll become very familiar to many of you. Now, Sir Isaac Newton, for one, discovered the concept of gravity. Now, there's a story behind this. It basically says he was under a tree, and then he got hit with an apple in the head, and that's when he really started to discover the concept of gravity. And of course, he thought about a lot of other things. Actually, before gravity, it was just believed by a lot of people that the objects just fell to Earth because they wanted to get to the core for some reason. It was like they had a will of their own. So we know that's not the case now, but Sir Isaac Newton was the first real person to say, okay, here's what's really going on. Now, through this discovery, we were able to know not just how, but why the planets move. Now, this is very interesting when you think about it. How does gravity really determine how the planets move? Well, it has a lot to do with the sun. And so you need to be paying a lot of attention listening to this here. The sun has a huge amount of gravity. And that huge amount of gravity actually keeps the planets in their proper motion. If it was not for that, then the planets would just slingshot out of our solar system, and that's not anything that we want. And so it's the sun's massive gravity that really helps out there. Now, Newton's law of universal gravity states that all matter has a gravitational pull. The more massive, the more gravity. And so the bigger the object, the more gravitational pull it has. This makes sense to what I was talking about earlier. And also something for you guys to know, every single object that has mass has gravity. And so even your body has an amount of gravity to it, but it's very small, especially compared to Earth. Now, Earth is huge compared to us, and that's why it has the gravity that it has. And the sun is huge compared to Earth. And so that's why the sun has such a pull on all of the planets. And through this concept, Sir Isaac Newton was able to determine, hey, this is how things actually, well, the planets actually stay in motion. They have to basically interact with the sun. From there, we want to talk about this idea of interplanetary space. Yes, we can talk about the planets, but what about all the space in between the planets? What's going on with that? So I've got some interesting facts here and some things that I want you guys to make sure write down and to know for later on. So, first one here, the space between the planets is considered to be a vacuum. Now, a vacuum, right here, are places where there are no matter, basically. And so it says vacuums are places that have no matter inside of them. And so, when you're thinking about the spaces between Earth and Mars, that whole space right there, we consider it to be a vacuum, or that there is nothing really there. Now, we do, however, know right here that there are small amounts of gas, but they are so far apart it's almost like there's nothing there. And so yes, there's tiny, 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 tiny things there, but for the most part it's just easiest to consider it a vacuum. You don't need to split hairs on this situation. Basically what it is it's a vacuum between the different planets. And because it's a vacuum, you get a lot of really interesting things. For example, right now you're hearing my voice. You hear my voice because there's air around your head and inside your ears. And that air actually carries my voice. In space, the air is so thin that you cannot be heard at all. So if you are to somehow survive out of your spacesuit, and we're going to talk about why, very unlikely that's going to happen, but if you could, you tried to scream, nothing would be heard. Or if there was an explosion in space, you would not be able to hear that either. because there is no air, no molecules to actually properly carry that sound. The amount that's there is just way too small. Now, some more things about interplanetary space I want you guys to know. It says, due to the lack of matter in this space, if you were in space without a spacesuit, you would lose consciousness in 15 seconds. And so, you have a 15-second, if you're lucky, window where you could be outside of your spacesuit and still somehow survive, which is still pretty crazy. You're probably, not going to survive much longer than that. And there's a lot of reasons for this, and I'm going to give you some reasons here. Number one here says your body will also swell up like a balloon, similar to when you bring a deep sea fish to the surface. And what's going to happen is you're going to start getting a lot of damage with your organs, and the air and the gases inside of your body is going to want to be spread out throughout the interplanetary space, and that causes a lot of issues, and that's very, very, very not good. And so before you would suffocate, you would actually have to deal with this situation here, and all of the air trying to be sucked out of your body very quickly, to the point where, there's nothing you can do. You can't really control it. You're going to have a very, very, very bad time, as you can imagine. And so it's a horrifying thing to be without your spacesuit in space. That's why they test those spacesuits so much. And I've showed you guys videos of them going and looking at spacesuits and making sure there's no holes in them. And if there's a hole, you have to run back immediately and things like that. That's why. You don't want to end up like that. Now, the temperature would also either be really hot or really cold based on where you are. Space is not for humans. We're not supposed to be out there, and because we're not supposed to be out there, it is a very unhospitable environment. It does not really help us out. Now, Earth, we're good on Earth, but space? No way. You're not going to be surviving too long in space. I'm sorry for you guys who had dreams of flying around without a spacesuit on, but unless we advance technology a whole lot, you're not going to be able to do that anytime soon. But at certain points, depending on where you are and how the sun's rays are going to hit you, you could be extremely hot and you could burn up very quickly. Even if you don't lose consciousness and die in those 15 seconds, or from your actual body just swelling up like a balloon to a certain extent, you would probably be cooked. Or you could be frozen very, very quickly based on where you are as well in relation to the sun. So those freezing cold temperatures, definitely not something that you want to deal with. So those are your basic things about interplanetary space that I wanted you guys to know today. Now I want you to pay close attention to this next part. Questions and notes. Now, it seems to be the case that I will not be able to see your notebooks for a little while, and so because of this, I want you to send a copy of your notes to my email along with the answer to the question below. So I do want you guys to send me your notes. So just write them out, or you put them in a Google Docs file, or whatever you choose to take notes in. Just have that, send it to me so I can make sure you're doing your notes and you're doing an excellent job. And then also, along with that today, I want you to answer this question. The question is, explain gravity's effect on the planets. Now, if you go back in the video a little bit, you can hear me talking about how the sun and its gravity heavily affects the planets, and that's a big part of it. And so, I just want you guys to make sure that you're getting all this stuff done. I really appreciate you guys paying attention and doing so well. I hope to see you guys in another video tomorrow. Thank you for your time, and goodbye.